Hello, Miss Jess again. Welcome back to day 2 of Wonder Junction. Do you remember what we talked about yesterday? What was the natural wonder that we got to read about that was born right in front of someone's eyes? Right, it was a volcano. Do you remember the name of it? Perry Cooten. Well, today we are going to take a look at another natural wonder. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Grand Canyon. You can see it here in the picture. Awesome. Who has ever been to the Grand Canyon? Raise your hand. Well, did you know that the Grand Canyon is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world? It twists and turns and goes on for 277 miles. That's crazy. It's 18 miles across in some places, and on average, it is 1 mile deep. And even though all these things are true facts, it is not the biggest canyon in the world. But because of all of the exposed rock layers that you can see, it makes it a natural wonder. And the Grand Canyon contains all 3 types of rocks. Can you tell me the names of 3 different types of rocks? Teachers, pause the video and see what they can do. Welcome back. If you said igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary, then you were right. Igneous rock forms when hot molten rock crystallizes and cools. Remember yesterday? Perry Cooten formed igneous rock. Which type of rock is formed when existing rocks are put under great pressure and heat? Metamorphic rock. And that reminds me of a butterfly because a caterpillar goes into its cocoon and it metamorphoses or changes into a butterfly. And that's exactly what happens to metamorphic rock. It goes through a change of its own. The third top is right above my head here. It's sedimentary. Sediment or sedimentary rock includes pieces of rocks, minerals, salt, sand, clay particles from different places. Little pieces of rock are broken off of existing rocks, and they're carried by wind or water and deposited or trapped somewhere else. If these particles get buried down far enough, they can become cemented together, forming sedimentary rock. When the particles are traveling or moving in water, like a river, the largest, heavier particles settle out first, and the smallest, lighter particles, they travel on a little ways. Have you ever noticed layers in rocks? Layers are formed because of the differences in the sediment that makes up those rocks. Let me show you some layers. These are an example of some of the layers in the Grand Canyon. Did you know that there are over 20 different layers in some places in the Grand Canyon of rocks? Igneous and metamorphic rock are found way down deep, near where the river is in the deepest part of the canyon. These bottom layers would have been formed on day 3 of God's creation week. Some sedimentary layers would have formed between creation week and the great flood that we know of. But most of the sedimentary rock layers that we see in the Grand Canyon and other places formed because of the flood. Who knows which flood I'm talking about? Teachers, pause and have a discussion really quick. The flood that I'm talking about is the global flood that God sent to judge the wickedness of mankind about 4,300 years ago, the one for which Noah built the ark. When the great flood occurred, there was a lot of dirt and sand and silt and settlement swirling around everywhere in the water. As those sediments sorted, larger pieces settle in first and then smaller pieces settle in last in the flowing waters. These layers were formed, which became sedimentary rock after the water drained and the layers hardened. Here's a picture of the Colorado Plateau. During the later stages of the flood, when sea basins lowered down, a large area of land called a plateau lifted up and caused some of these newly formed layers of sediment to bend and tilt. Do you think you could take sedimentary rock and bend it today without it cracking? You can't. Once that cementing process is complete, you have hard, brittle rock. The metamorphic rock at the bottom cracked. So why didn't the sedimentary rock layers crack? Well, they weren't cemented into hard rock layers yet. So what does that tell us? Teachers, pause for a second and listen to some answers. Welcome back. It tells us that these layers were still soft. Geologists, those are people who study rocks, would call it plastic. There were 4,000 feet of stacked plastic rock in the canyon area that hadn't hardened yet. That sounds like good evidence that the global flood occurred, doesn't it? Take a look at these. Here's some more evidence that the global flood occurred. Fossils, including sea creatures, which had to be buried quickly, have been found in many layers of the Grand Canyon. Also, erosion is not found between most of the layers. People would expect that we see the layers laid down over a very long time, that there would be erosion there, but we haven't found it. Okay, so far we talked about the layers of sediment, but how do we get from there to a canyon that's a mile deep? Remember, the river at the bottom of the canyon, down near the metamorphic rock, that's the Colorado River. As the flood waters went down, a huge amount of water got trapped behind the plateau, which acted like a dam. Then at some point, the dam must have given way, and all of that water went rushing through and helped carve out the Grand Canyon that we know today. We don't know how long it actually took to form the Grand Canyon, but since the flood occurred about 4,300 years ago, and much weathering and erosion has occurred since then, we know for sure it took less time than that. We do have records of how long it took for other canyons to form, though. Let me show you a picture. This is Canyon Lake Gorge. It's in Texas, and it was formed in just 3 days back in July of 2002 when a spillway from a dam overflowed. Canyon Lake Gorge is 1.5 miles long, and in some places it's 80 feet deep. And this is proof that canyons can form rapidly. Let's take a look at some rock formations. These pictures are not from the Grand Canyon. They are all from the western United States. There are portions of rock formations that we can see in some places that are mainly sedimentary. Any igneous or metamorphic rock would be buried way down at their bases. Take a look at the pictures in your room. Can you see layers in the photos? Let's make some rock layers of our own. Can't wait to see you on day 3 in Wonder Junction.